So, first of all, thanks a ton for coming out and hanging with me for this morning. And huge thanks to David Franklin. David is an awesome guy, wouldn't y'all say?
You don't know me, don't say that.
Listen, y'all give it up. Let's just clap for him. It makes him feel good about himself. He's really got some self-esteem issues, so anytime you can clap for him, that'd be helpful. And super pumped to have Patrick Latham now in this association. Patrick is a new pastor at Bartow, or what's the name of it? Tabernacle Baptist Church here in Bartow County, doing an awesome job. So he and I went to seminary, so hopefully he won't make fun of me while I'm doing this. But I will tell you my background a little bit. I actually pastored Concord Baptist Church up in Northeast Georgia. I did that for about 9 years before the Lord called me to this particular role last July, and really struggled with it tremendously. My heart's always been evangelism ever since I came to faith in Jesus, and I'll share that story with you later on possibly. But so I've already kind of been leaning in that direction for quite some time, and the Lord just opened up the door, and so now having a great opportunity to go around the state and really encourage pastors to lead their churches to be evangelistic. And that's really what the domino effect is all about. I think you guys know this for sure. We have a great commission from a great God named Jesus. Somebody say amen on that. Amen. Right? So the commission is very simple. We are to go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. One thing that I've realized when I pastored, as soon as I came on staff at Concord back in the day, I probably was 1 week in it, and people were asking me, what's your vision for the church? So my answer to that question was, I have absolutely no idea. I don't know this church. I don't know this area, so I'm not casting vision yet. So, but I do know what the mission is. The mission, we don't make up. That's a good place to say amen, right? Yeah, Jesus told us what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be making disciples. Now, obviously, in order to make a disciple, you and I have to be willing to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with those who are far from God. So we've got to lead our churches to do this. In fact, I would say, as a leader in the local church, the main aim is to lead God's people to accomplish the mission of Jesus. So this is what all of us are called to do as leaders in the local church. We lead the church to fulfill the Great Commission of the Lord Jesus Christ. So that being the case, we ask the question, how do we create an evangelistic culture in the context of our church? And that's what the domino effect really is all about. And when you think about the domino effect, really it's kind of like, it describes the cumulative effect produced when one event initiates a succession of similar events. So what I'm going to do this morning really is just share with you before we eat lunch what the dominoes are. I've got 7 major dominoes. You guys got little fill-in-the-blanks on your table. And I'm going to kind of go through these dominoes and give them to you pretty quickly, kind of staccato fashion. But here's what I want you to know this morning. Thank you. If you grew up in church or you've been involved in ministry for any length of time, you're not going to be blown away with the dominoes themselves. Right? You're going to be like, yeah, I already knew this. But what we are going to talk about is how to effectively execute pushing over these dominoes in the life of our church family. That's really where the rubber meets the road, where you begin to actually see some change. So that being the case, before I just dive in and give you all of them, I do want to give you some game-changing perspectives that have happened in my life that have helped me lead a church to kind of think evangelistically. And one of the game-changing perspectives was to begin to look at church members as missionaries instead of just Christians. And I don't know why this took me so long, because I pastored another church before I pastored at Concord, but it was interesting how it happened. I was invited to go out and preach a missions event. So all these missionaries were in the room. I was getting prepared, writing down kind of the sermon for that, and really just praying, Lord, what do you want me to do to encourage these missionaries as they're out on the field, that kind of deal. So I went, I preached it. I mean, put a sermon together that basically was completely different than how I would necessarily preach on a Sunday morning. And then as I was driving back after that event, I just was kind of thanking the Lord for the opportunity to preach there and for the opportunity to invest in the life of missionaries. Y'all know how you pray, right? So I'm praying, Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then it was as if the Lord said, Levi, you preach to missionaries every single Sunday. And for whatever reason, that never entered into my mind. That as soon as a person comes to faith in Jesus Christ, they join a worldwide missions movement. And it's designed to reach people who are far from God. So until I begin to actually look at church members as missionaries, I never thought of them that way, therefore I never treated them that way. But as soon as I began to view them differently, it totally changed how I did absolutely everything. It changed how I preached on Sunday mornings, because now I'm not asking the question, what am I going to preach to this church Sunday? The question kind of changed for me. I started asking, what am I going to do this Sunday to equip the missionaries to go out and do evangelism? So everything radically, and then I began to look at families as missionary families in their neighborhood. How am I equipping those families to actually reach people with the gospel? If somebody is a teacher in the local school system, how am I equipping that teacher to be an evangelistic influence right where they work? So when I began to have these questions swirling in my mind, then I began to put together messages that actually spoke to them as missionaries. And I will tell you too, I tricked them several times, but one time we were doing a Wednesday night Bible study, so we had a bunch of folks in the room. They were sitting at round tables like this. And I said, here's what I want you to do. I had a little sheet of paper in the middle. I want you to take that sheet of paper, and I want you to imagine that your table is going on a mission trip for the next 5 years to Belarus. And what I want you to do is write down the top 5 things that you're going to do whenever you get to Belarus. So you can imagine, right? They all got to writing really quickly. They wrote down the top 5 things. And then I just called out a couple of volunteers in the room, and I said, hey, stand up and tell us what you wrote, what your table came up with. And so they stood up. As soon as they stood up, they started reading them. Here's some of the things they wrote. We're going to find out where lost people spend time and go spend time with them. We're going to learn how to speak the gospel in their language. We're going to find a local church so we can be encouraged as we're involved in missionary work. All right, so anyway, they shared a few things. Then I said, anybody else get anything different? No, everybody's like, no, we got about the same thing. I said, okay, here's what I want you to do with your sheet of paper now. I want you to go back and put a check mark by every single one of the things you can be doing right now where you live. Are y'all following the train here? So one old man in the group said, oh, preacher, you got us. Right? And I said, I wasn't trying to get you, man. I was just trying to show you that we don't think like missionaries unless we leave our town. But the reality is God put you in this town so you could actually begin to think like a missionary. Learn how to speak the language of those who are lost. Make sure you're spending time with lost people. Make sure you're being encouraged by other believers as you are going out. So this was a huge change. Matter of fact, I preached a whole series on this at Concord, challenging our people to see themselves as missionaries. And before I started the sermon, I said, hey, I just want to do this beforehand. I want to pray for all the missionaries in the room. So if you're a missionary here today, I just want you to stand up. I had like one person stand. Are y'all with me? I did that on purpose, though. So anyway, we prayed for the one person. Then I preached the whole sermon, basically telling them they were all missionaries. I said, before we leave, I want to pray for all the missionaries in the room. So if you're a missionary, would you please stand? So then the whole church stands up. So it's just a matter of allowing yourself to see them as missionaries, but then also training them to see themselves as missionaries. Because again, if you're not thinking about them as missionaries, you're not going to train them to live that way. And if they don't see themselves as missionaries, they're not going to live that way. So this is huge for us. And this isn't in the notes, by the way. Y'all are still with me? Say yes? Mm-hmm. All right, so second game-changing perspective for me was that I began to look at the church as a sending agency. What had happened to me is I started kind of measuring success in church based on how many people we could get in the room. That's a horrible way to measure success. So what we did is we changed everything. I changed it with our staff as well. We want to measure success not based on how many we can get in the room, but how many we are sending out to do effective missionary work in the community. And that whole sending agency concept radically changed how our church operated. So much so that it actually led us in the days ahead at Concord as we cast vision to become a multi-site congregation. So when I left, we had 5 sites in Northeast Georgia, but we were actually raising up people at the mother church, so to speak, and then we were sending out 50 and 100 at a time to go and start a new work in a new area. But that takes time. People, by the way, people aren't fired up to do that until they first see themselves as missionaries. So it's just seeing them as missionaries, seeing the church as a sending agency. And that would be a great question for you to ask about your church on a regular basis. How many people are we actually sending out of this church with the gospel equipped to share Jesus with those who are far from God? And if you're getting a goose egg on that answer, then you got to change what you're doing. You got to look at your leadership and say, okay, I'm called to equip people to do the work of the ministry. That's Ephesians, right? What is the work of the ministry? It's to go and make disciples. So if we're not doing that as church leaders, and our churches are not doing that, bold statement here, then we are not following Jesus. Because Jesus says, you follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Y'all remember when he rolled this out? Right? So if you're following, you'll be fishing. If you ain't fishing, you ain't following.
Wow.
Come on, baby. Every once in a while, just throw me a bone. You know what I'm saying? Darren, help a brother out up here. All right, so anyway. And here's the other thing. And I just call this a game-changing perspective as well. This is all introduction, then I'm going to give you these dominoes real quick. But here's what happened. When I came to the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, we sat in a room, and guys were asking this question. And I was just observing. There's a lot of staff in there. And they were looking at baptisms in the state of Georgia. How many people are being converted, coming to Christ in Georgia? And the trend's like every year is just going down, down, down. So anyway, they're all bummed out about it. So I'm listening to them, and they say, why aren't churches more evangelistic? Right? That was kind of their first question. And then here was the response they got, because pastors aren't evangelistic. And then everybody stopped talking. That's not how you find the root cause of a problem, right? You don't ask 2 whys, you ask 5 whys. That's an engineering principle, Toyota way. You might want to read it one day. But anyway, so you just walk through this idea. Why are pastors not evangelistic? And as you go through, some people are like, well, probably because they're so busy, they got so many things going on, it just kind of takes their eye off the ball. Why are they so busy? Why they got so many things going on that it takes their eye off the ball? When you started going down through the 5 whys, we came to the bottom root cause analysis of the problem is that, and I'm a pastor too, so y'all will be okay with this statement. We're going to be buddies after this, right? Most pastors are horrible at time management.
That's right.
Isn't that a crazy thought? So the reason that they're so busy and they got so many things going on is they don't delegate well, they don't plan their days well, their months well, their year well. And if they're not planning themselves to be evangelistic, they're not going to lead their church with a plan to be evangelistic. So we'll talk about that a little further as we go on. All right, is everybody still my friend so far? All right, good deal. So hopefully you'll be my friend after this is all over with. We're going to walk through the first domino. It's the domino of prayer. So if you really want your church family to be leaning towards evangelism to reach people with the gospel, you've got to lead them to pray for lost people by name. I think you guys would agree with that, right? That's a pretty simple principle that all of us need to grab hold of. But here's what I would say. Whenever you're praying for lost people, and here's what I've experienced, and I'll just tell you, you guys tell me if you've experienced the same thing. You get together with a group of folks and you want to have a time of prayer, and somebody will raise their hand and they'll start naming all the sick people in the church. Have y'all seen this, right? Pray for Aunt Bessie, her big toe broke, she's at the hospital. Pray for, Uncle George, he got attacked by bears. So they have all these prayer requests, very specific. We're all jotting them down, we pray. And then it's like somebody may say, we just want to pray for all the lost people in the state of Georgia. All right, now check this out. That's not bad. Y'all with me? But what I've noticed as a pastor is that when we pray for sick people, we're very specific. But when we pray for lost people, we're very generic. Now, why do we do that? It's because whenever you pray for lost people by name, there's some personal responsibility attached to that. So what I encourage people to do is lead your church to pray for lost people by name. But if you're going to lead them to do it, that means you got to do it. And you as the model leader in the context of the church, you've got to be willing to share with your church family the lost people that you are specifically praying for. And we did this multiple times in the context of Concord. So I would literally share specifically the individuals that my family was praying for who were lost. We lived in a small town. Are y'all with me? So when I would call out people's names, there were several people in the church who knew exactly who I was talking about. So we moved into a new neighborhood. My family and I, we got to know the folks who were in our neighborhood. Scott Darby lived down the street, and I came to realize he didn't know Jesus, so we started praying for him specifically. Across the street from us, a lady by the name of Donna, her whole family, they don't know Jesus either. So anyway, I lead the church to pray for lost people by name, and I just get up and I say, here's who we're praying for as a family. Scott Darby. Y'all with me? Say yes? Yeah. And as soon as I mentioned his name, I saw some heads go like, I think I know this guy. Right? Donna, so I mentioned who Donna is as well. Everybody knows who, or not everybody, but several knew who she was as well. And what it did is after everything was over with, this is how conversations began to change. People would come up to me and they'd be like, I know Scott Darby. I work with Scott Darby. I was like, well, he's in my neighborhood and he doesn't know Jesus, man. What are we going to do about that? Are y'all with me? So you're just changing the dynamics, and then you're leading them to actually pray for lost people. I will tell you, by the way, that Scott Darby has come to faith in Jesus, which is awesome. Amen. I had the opportunity to share the gospel with him several times. Here's the crazy thing. He never got saved when I was sharing Jesus with him. And I ran into him at a men's event that I was preaching at. And he showed up, and I was like, first of all, I was kind of shocked he was there. Y'all with me on that? So I was like, Scott, what's up, man? What you doing here? And he came up, he gave me a big hug. He said, man, I want you to know I gave my heart to Jesus. I was like, what? Shut up. So anyway, we kind of, can I say shut up here in Bartow County? Anyway, so we kind of talked through that, and he shared how he had gone to a church service on Easter, heard the gospel, and God just got a hold of him, and he came into the Lord. And here's the crazy thing. He lives in my neighborhood. He didn't go to my church. He got saved in another church. Are y'all with me? Wow. Yeah. Some people plant the seed, some water, but God's the one who brings the increase. Amen? That's right. But we're just a part of planting the seed, man, watering. So just be a part of that and lead your church to be a part of that as well. And then I encourage you to be creative on this, right? So if you're going to lead your church family to pray for lost people by name, give them the opportunity to actually write those names down, put those names somewhere where they can actually be seen on a regular basis. And I will tell you, for an Easter series one time, and I'll just tell you this because Easter's coming up, we did a thing called Hope. And so I had Hope actually create out of these big wooden panels. So it said Hope up there. And then for our invitation, I encourage people to come forward, take Sharpies, and write down the names of people who are lost that they're praying for on that board, on the Hope emblem. So anyway, we took that, we put it up on our stage. So for every Sunday leading up to Easter, we had a time in our service where we were praying specifically for people by name who did not know Jesus. And I would walk over to the board when I was leading it, and I would just call names out. Are y'all with me? And so what are we doing? Just teaching them to pray for lost people. Here's the thing. If you're not praying for lost people by name as a pastor, your church is not going to see that as a priority because you don't see it as a priority. And then secondly, I would tell you, whatever you pray about as a church is what you will prioritize. So if you're praying for lost people, you will prioritize lost people. And I will tell you too, just free information, I know y'all are all preachers, but that was the priority of Jesus' ministry. I came to seek and save that which was lost. That's what he came to do. So we are supposed to be image bearers of the Lord. So we should be doing this as well. Somebody say amen. I got to get through this real fast. All right, number 2 is the domino of the Sunday morning experience. So you want to act like you knew they were actually coming. So have you ever had somebody come to your door at your own house and you didn't know they were going to show up? Right, that happens, right? So they knock on the door. What do? I don't know if, maybe y'all don't do this. My wife and I, though, we got 4 kids. Somebody knocks on the door, we didn't know they were coming. We all get real quiet real fast. And I'm like, y'all get out. You know what I mean? I don't know, who is this? You know, what's going on? And then we find windows to try to look out to see who it is before we open. And anyway, we're not expecting people to come. But if we know somebody's actually coming, what's happening, fellas? Come on in. If we know somebody is actually coming, what do? We get prepared for them. You know, we vacuum the floor. We dust everything. We have some food put out for them. Here's the reality. Sometimes people show up at your church on Sunday morning. They have never been to your church, and it's like you didn't realize that you might have guests that morning. You weren't prepared for them. And I'll tell you, too, when I left pastoring and I went into this particular role, there were a couple of Sundays where I wasn't preaching somewhere. So I decided I would go and actually visit some other churches, some that I had heard about. And I will tell you, this is, just so you guys know, we went to a church that was considered one of the fastest growing churches in the nation for quite some time. So my wife, my 4 kids, got a 16, 14, 12, and 10-year-old. We all went to this church. I was like, we're going to go. I just want to see how they do hospitality whenever you show up. So we go, we park the car, we walk to the door, and dude opened the door for us, which I appreciated. You're the man. So anyway, we walk in, we stand in the foyer. There was a whole group of people who had T-shirts on that had the name of the church. Not a one of them said a word to us. Are y'all with me? Now this is like it blew my mind. So I made it very apparent and clear that I didn't know where I was or what was going on. Are y'all with me? So here's me. When I walk in, are y'all with me? Say yes? Mm-hmm. All right, so when I walk into the foyer, I walk in and I just start going like this, looking around like, what are we supposed to do? I start looking at my wife like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. You know, I'm just looking. They didn't say a word. Is that not crazy? Went into the worship service, left the worship service, not one single word the entire time. And I thought to myself, no wonder that church is struggling now. But my question to you is this. If a couple shows up at your church this Sunday morning, would they get the same treatment? Or would they actually experience some hospitality, where they would experience welcoming atmosphere? So you have to be very strategic on this. I got a buddy of mine at Southside Church. His name is Jeff Williams, and they have a deal called a 6-minute team. And the 6-minute team, what they say is they've got a group of volunteers that there are 6 minutes that you have with a guest before they make a decision on whether they're coming back to church or not. 6 minutes. You know what that means? That's before you preach. That's before one song is sung. They make up their mind. So what they did with their 6-minute team is they actually timed it out. From the time frame a guest pulls onto the parking lot, what are we doing in that first 6 minutes to make an impact in their lives? And he actually tells them, you are doing the work of evangelism with me just simply by showing hospitality. So this is massive. You want to act like you knew individuals were coming. And then I encourage people to create a spot for guests to check in. And I will tell you too, most people aren't giving out as much information as they used to. Have y'all noticed this, by the way? Right? But most people are good with giving their name and maybe an email address, maybe even a cell phone number. So I would encourage you, figure out a place where guests can register on Sunday morning. Make it very plain, whether it be in your foyer. Try some things that are absolutely different. So we used to measure our success on this on a regular basis as a staff. And when we began to see that we had less registration cards being turned in, we actually changed how we did it. So we would just change it. So we had a deal out in the foyer, big tent, and it would just say guest registration. We tried to give it all cool names, by the way, in the past, you know what I mean? But when you have to explain the name, it's not cool, all right? So we just said guest registration, so that just made it real simple. And encouraged people to go and sign up. But we would get names, we'd get numbers, we'd get email addresses, and then we would follow up with them that week. I can't tell you how many times we had the opportunity to share Jesus over the telephone, just through a phone call. So we call you, you visit our church, I call you up and be like, what's happening? This is Levi, punctured came this past Sunday. This coming Sunday, I tell them whatever we were doing. And then I would ask them, hey, do you attend church somewhere on a regular basis? And then regardless of what they told me, all right, regardless of what they told me, they could say, I go to, whatever church down the street, or they could say, no, I don't go to church at all. I would always just say, well, church is important, but it's not the most important thing. Most important thing is what's going to happen to you when you die. And that's what we're really concerned with here at Concord. So let me ask you, if you died now, where do you feel like you would go? Are y'all with me? It's a simple, right into the gospel presentation, and you have the opportunity to share it. We led a lot of people to Jesus on the telephone. They would come to our church on Sunday morning, then they walk the aisle, then they get baptized. All those kinds of things would actually take place. But you have to be, you don't drift into this. Are y'all with me? Mm-hmm. You don't drift into evangelism. You have to be intentional about it. And really that's what we're talking about. And then I would tell you on Sunday mornings, tell everybody what the next step is. So if you have a guest who shows up on Sunday morning, whenever you're up there as the leader and you're welcoming everybody, you're welcoming the guest, tell them what their next step is. If your next step in your strategy in your church is small groups, tell them about small groups. But do not make the assumption they know how to get to a small group, right? We've got a lot of unchurched people who don't have a church background who show up. So talk to them like they have absolutely no idea what to do. I promise you it'll make a huge difference in the life of your church family. And by the way, I would encourage you to do this. Some of you have churches, you can get up on Sunday morning, you know whether or not you have guests or not. Get up and act like you got guests every Sunday. Right. Whether they're there or not. Because what you're doing is you are training your people simultaneously that they ought to be bringing guests. Are y'all with me? They should be inviting people. I tell people the same thing when it comes to an invitation on Sunday morning. You always share Jesus every single Sunday. I'm with a conviction you hadn't preached Jesus until you've shared the gospel. So it doesn't matter what text of Scripture you're preaching from. Run them to Jesus and encourage them to give their heart to the one true and living God. Amen? And then give an invitation. And even if, listen, don't get all sour in your own heart because people aren't walking forward.
That's right.
Get up there and give an invitation, and whether they walk forward or not, what you are doing is two things. One, you're teaching your people how to share Jesus every single Sunday because you're doing it, and you're giving an invitation. So you're training them. So even if nobody comes forward, just know you're training people. Somebody say amen on that? And then when they come forward, rejoice in that. Anyway, all right, number 3. This is the domino of personal evangelism. Domino of personal evangelism. So again, as a pastor, you have to be very, very intentional about being a personal evangelist yourself. That's what Paul told Timothy, right? He said, do the work of an evangelist. Timothy was a pastor, but he says, make sure you do the work of an evangelist. So make sure you're sharing the gospel of Jesus. And I'll tell you, for me, when I went to Concord, I realized about 2 years in that I was spending a lot of time with a lot of Christians. Are y'all with me? And I thought, this ain't good. I've got to get around lost people. So I know y'all can't tell it, but I started working out. Amen? I'll take my shirt off later. Y'all be ashamed of yourselves. But anyway, so that was a joke. But I started working out, but I did that primarily so that I could get around lost people. I started volunteering to help with my son's baseball team. Why? Because I wanted to get around lost people. Because I need to be sharing the gospel with them. And then I got real intentional with my calendar as well, and I didn't want 1 month to go by where I didn't have a lunch appointment set up with someone who was lost that I was going to be sitting down with and sharing the gospel with them. Does that make sense? So when you look at your own personal calendar, I would encourage you, man, find some time, some margin, some lunches where you're spending time with lost people and you're actually setting an appointment to sit down with them and share the gospel of Jesus with them. And I will tell you too, when you go out to eat with people, you don't have to be all abrasive, right, and get up in their face about Jesus. But what you want to do is start a conversation. Begin to open up dialogue where you have an opportunity just to share with them and they get to know you. You have an opportunity to share your own testimony. You have an opportunity to pray for them with whatever's going on in their life. But you're building that opportunity to share the gospel with them. So take advantage of it. We had a place right around the corner from where Concord was called El Rey. It was a Mexican restaurant, and so I would have appointments there all the time. So on Sunday morning, I would actually get up and I'd be like, I was at El Rey this past week. We had done it so many times that every time I said I was at El Rey, everybody knew exactly what I was doing at El Rey. And people would come up to me like, I saw you at El Rey. I saw you over there with that guy. That's why I didn't say anything, because I knew you'd be sharing Jesus with me. Right? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Don't mess with me. But anyway, but that's the idea. Again, I'm not doing that to act like I got it going on when I'm sharing this with the church. I'm doing this to actually share with them that they can do this. You can do this. Have lunch with people. But again, it's hard to encourage people to do stuff that you're not doing. Is that not right?
Yeah.
So make sure you're doing it, and then you'll have some pathos behind it whenever you stand up and encourage other people to do it as well. And then I would also just encourage you to make sure that you train your people to do personal evangelism. And you've got to figure out a way to do it. Every church is different. Every culture is different. You've got to figure out a way to actually do that. And before you roll out today, I'm going to hook you up with a personal evangelism training deal that we just put together at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. What you have in this little booklet is basically the model that I've been using since I was a teenager in sharing the gospel. And so first time I ever used what I teach in this, I did it at Rack Room Shoes. Are y'all with me? Y'all remember Rack Room, right? So I went into Rack Room, we were sharing the gospel, and I used 3 shoes to share the gospel. I then asked the people that I was sharing with, they want to give their heart to Jesus, and they're like, yes, we would. Like, well, you all want to pray right now? Yes, we would. I was like, all right. So we was in Rack Room, and then they prayed and gave their heart to Christ, right? So I've used this method to train many people. So before you leave today, I'm going to hook you up with this. Now, what's awesome about this is kind of the hub of a wheel of evangelism. So here's a personal evangelism tool called No Sweat Evangelism. And if this is the hub, there are spokes, which I call kind of pathways, on how you can apply this in the context of your church. So here's how you can do it through your Sunday school ministry if you have one. Here's how you can do it as a small group Bible study if you want to do that. Here's how to do it as a one-evening training. Here's how to do it with your deacon ministry. How many of you would love to see your deacon sharing Jesus, right? All right, so you got to train them to do that, encourage them to do that, hold them accountable to do that. But anyway, there's all these pathways. We're going to hook you up with this before you roll out, and a lot of cool stuff coming out of that I'm super, super pumped about. So anyway, domino of a personal evangelism, absolutely important. Everybody with me? Here's what I'll tell you too, just for free, because I remember I did a small group on how to share Jesus at our church. We did it on Sunday night. That's kind of how we did our discipleship deal. And so I was all fired up about it. I mean, I encouraged everybody in the mom to be a part of it. And I had a big room set aside because I just knew it was going to be flooded, right? And anyway, so we had our small groups that evening, and I'm all standing at the door waiting for everybody to show up because we're going to learn how to share Jesus. Had 12 people show up. 12, right? Now, to kind of give you, that wasn't even, I don't even think that was 1% of our church. So 12. So anyway, I love the 12. Y'all with me? Jesus loved the 12, so I love these 12. And we equipped them. But I walked away from that going, all right, Lord, I know that I'm called to equip everybody to share the gospel, but this ain't working. So what's another method to do it? And then I started thinking, when do we have the most people in the room? Sunday morning. So you know what I started doing? Evangelism training on Sunday morning. Right? So I'll give you an example of this. I taught on the doctrines of salvation, right? So justification, sanctification, glorification, and adoption. Adoption was number 2. But anyway, so I taught the first 15 minutes of the sermon. I taught on the doctrine. And then the last 15 minutes of the sermon, I shared with everybody how to use one verse to share Jesus. And I hooked everybody up with a little 3x5 card, like a little business card, that had that verse on it. And then on the back of it, I said, I want you to write the name of the person that you're praying for. And then I share with them how to do it. And then I sent them out. It's like, now, you go out and do that this week. Are y'all with me? So you just challenge them to do it. And then the next Sunday, I get up and I preach on adoption. The first 15 minutes, last 15 minutes, I do the exact same thing. Here's how to share Jesus, who is one verse. I go through it's like I was preaching the same sermon almost for 4 weeks in a row. Are y'all with me? And then we had 3 services on Sunday morning, so that was a lot. I felt like I was really repeating myself a lot. But we were training our people. And what was amazing is we trained more people to share the gospel than I've ever trained before. And we did it completely different than I'd ever done before. We just did it on Sunday morning. So you kind of have to say, how am I going to get more people sharing Jesus? How can I help them? And that's what we did. Everybody with me so far? All right, number 4, the domino of event evangelism. Domino of event evangelism. So this is basically using a large event, revival, VBS, wild game dinner. There's a whole host of things that you can do that's kind of an event. One thing that the Georgia Baptists figured out, which I didn't even realize, they said those who have evangelistic events baptize 27% more new believers than churches that don't. That's pretty wild, right? 27%. So you're doing things to draw a crowd, but you're also doing things so that you're creating an environment for the gospel to be shared. So what I encourage people, if you're doing an event where you want to be evangelistic, you better make sure you share Jesus. Amen? All right, so have an opportunity where you actually share Jesus. If you're the guy presenting it, and this is how we did it, I would always say, I'm going to share Jesus, but I want to do it in 10 minutes. That's as long as I'm going. I'm not preaching a 45-minute sermon to thousands of people who've gathered on this lawn. I'm going to get up there and I'm going to give them the gospel. And I'm going to give them an opportunity to respond. So if you're going to do that, event evangelism, tell your people. We're doing this so we can reach people who do not know Jesus, so you need to invite them. And then, if it doesn't work, stop doing it. Y'all with me? Say yeah? Yeah. So we did an Easter egg hunt. They'd never done one at Concord before, so I thought I was going to be slick. Do an Easter egg hunt. We'll get a lot of lost people here. So we did this for 3 years in a row. And guess how many lost people were showing up? 0. It was all church people. So we stopped doing it. And then guess what? I had people calling. Why ain't we doing the Easter egg hunt again this year? Because it was designed to reach lost people. And I would ask them, how many lost people we reached with that? No, 0. I said, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. Are y'all with me? Right? If we're doing it to reach lost people, we want to make sure we're reaching lost people. So be very careful whenever you're trying things and you're putting stuff out there as event evangelism. Don't feel like you got to do it every single year for the rest of your life till Jesus comes. If it ain't working, quit doing it. And then just tell folks, we're going to try something different. Are y'all with me? So I'll just give you another example. Fall Festival, we used to do that on our campus. And so we'd have a whole lot of people there. But about 4 years in, I had a couple of staff guys. We would just go around and share the gospel the whole time. But I looked out at the crowd, and I had a couple of guys with me, and I was like, hey, look out here. Do y'all see anybody different than we've seen for the past couple of years? They said, no. I said, that's what I thought, too. I said, we're not doing this anymore. So we decided we're not going to do it anymore. So what we decided to do, though, was equip people in our church to do a fall festival in their backyard in their neighborhoods. So we just made little boxes. All the money that we would put into Fall Festival, we divided up, made all these boxes, and then families were doing fall festivals in their backyard. Guess how many lost people we came into contact that way? A ton of them. You with me? Again, equip them, send them, train them, use events to draw people to come to know Jesus. And I always tell folks, too, when you do an event deal, make sure you're getting prospects for people. And now, this is my nerd factor kicking in. Are y'all with me? So what we would do is we'd have a budget for an event. And then we would take our prospects, how many we got, and we would divide how many prospects we got by how much money we put into it. And that determined how much we paid for one prospect. Everybody following the train? So we did this one time, and then I came away realizing, holy cow, y'all realize we paid $350 for this one prospect? I was like, that's horrible stewardship. We ain't doing this no more. Are y'all following? So then we said, how much do you think one prospect should cost? That sounds weird to ask. What would y'all say? What seems like a legitimate number? Y'all do have money here in Bartow County, right? Yeah, just guess. He's not going to make anything right or wrong. Say it. You might. Say what?
$10.
$10. Yeah, you're cheaper than we will say.
Boy to Jesus.
See, that's why I cannot stand Patrick Blake. But anyway, so no, that's what we ended up doing. We just kind of gave it a figure, and then that's what kind of drove everything. But when you start looking at events saying we need X amount of prospects, it changes how you do absolutely every bit of it. So that's now how you're measuring the success of that event. So again, you want to make sure you're getting Jesus out through the event. Here's another one, service evangelism. Going to go real fast through this one as well. The service evangelism is basically meeting the physical needs of people in your community and using that as a bridge to share Jesus with those who do not know Him. So you want to be very strategic in this as well. Find out what the needs are in your community. How can you bridge the gap? And then you want to make sure that, as you do it, as your people do it, you want to make sure that evangelism is actually involved in that. Because here's the thing, the goal of the church is not to make earth a better place to go to hell from. Y'all with me? So if all we're doing is serving and we're not sharing Jesus, then we're just making earth a better place to go to hell from. No. So serve to build that relationship, but then make sure you're sharing Jesus. So one that I remember, we did a deal called the Hope Center, where we were basically helping people in the context of our community who were down and out, didn't have jobs, etc. We would come up with some food, hook them up with some clothing, and that went on for quite some time. And there were a lot of people who were showing up. But then I was getting reports that nobody was sharing Jesus at it. Are y'all with me? That's a problem. Y'all want to come in? Come on in. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Oh my gosh.
She's going to. She gets to speak at lunchtime.
Oh, do you speak good? All right, excellent. Come on in. But anyway, you want to make sure that you're evaluating that to determine whether or not you're actually accomplishing the deal of sharing Jesus. All right. So number 6 is the domino of team evangelism, and team evangelism really talks about evangelism through small groups. So if you think about your small group structure, the question is, how are you equipping that small group structure to actually do evangelism in the community? So you want to champion in that small group who can push it. You want to also give them a very strategic way to actually share the gospel. So you just want to look at how you can do that. Here's the 7th one, and that's the domino of baptism. So you want to make baptism an absolutely big deal. Baptism is going public with your faith, right? Now, we don't baptize people because we're Baptist. We baptize people because that's what Jesus told us to do. Y'all remember that Great Commission? So we baptize them. They're going public. So whenever they're going public, what I encourage people to do is this. If you know somebody's going to be baptized this coming Sunday, have that individual invite all of their unbelieving friends and family members to come and watch the baptism so they can come and be a part of that. Some churches are hooking people up with t-shirts that say stuff like, born again, or I got baptized, or whatever, so it's kind of like a conversation starter. But you're using that baptism to also share Jesus. And this is huge. Every opportunity you get in the context of your worship service, share the gospel. So every time we baptized somebody, whether it was me or another staff member, we were always sharing Jesus while we were doing the baptism. So I would share with everybody. Hey, Patrick Latham finally gave his heart to Jesus, right? So we'd be like fired up about his decision. But here's the thing. Patrick Latham, his sins aren't getting washed away by this water. This is the same water that runs at your house. Nothing necessarily special about it. What he is getting washed with is the blood of Jesus. And then I would share literally with every single person there how they could give their heart to Christ. And then I would tell them. And at the end of the service, I'm going to give an invitation. So if you'd like to give your heart to Jesus and be baptized, we're going to give you an opportunity to do that before you leave today. Are y'all with me? Have y'all ever listened? Y'all heard of Billy Graham? If you ever listened to Billy Graham preach, count how many invitations he gives before he gives the invitation. The first words out of his mouth are going to be something similar to this. Tonight, we're going to give you an opportunity to give your heart to Jesus. I'm going to invite you to come in just a few moments. It's like the entire day he gives the invitation like 16 or 20 times before he gives the invitation. So when you think about your service, how can you use baptism to be an invitation for people to give their heart to Jesus. Very, very massive. Everybody follow me? Say yes? Now, I'm supposed to be done at 45 after, so I got 1 minute. Here's what we're going to do before we eat. It's easy to look at these dominoes that have been described and kind of become overwhelmed for some of us, right? So you're looking at it, it's like, good night, we're not doing any of that. Well, my goal is not to try to make you feel bad about it, right? What I am trying to do is actually let you see this. When you think of dominoes the way we've talked about them today, sometimes you think of them as lined up, and you want to push the first one over that we just talked about. That's not how I want you to look at it. What I want to do today, and this is what we're going to talk about after we eat for a little bit, is turn the dominoes out at you. And I want to lead you through a simple strategic plan to push only one domino over. So whenever you leave here, if you want to, when you leave here, you will have a strategic plan to push one of the dominoes over. But you've got to determine what domino it is you feel like you need to be pushing over in the life of your church. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to do that after we eat. You want me to pray? So, feel free if you need to grab something or whatever, go ahead and do it, and we'll get cracking here. But basically, this question is, how do I experience the domino effect in my fellowship? So, as I said, what I wanted to really get you to think through is what's the one domino that you can push over in the life of your church. And this is where I probably get more practical than you've ever had in the context of a training, or at least I know that I've ever had. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I would go to training events, they would share a whole lot of information, and I would be like, yeah, that makes sense, that's really good. And then I would leave, get in my car and drive back to the church, and I wouldn't know what to do with it, right? It's like, oh, how do I actually do this now? So really, how to do this is what we're going to talk about, and really just taking 4 easy steps. So the first step is what I call extreme ownership. This is kind of going to sting a little bit, but matter of fact, I'm just going to read it the way I wrote it, so I'm not looking anybody in the eyes when I say it. Here's the thing. You, as the leader of your fellowship, are responsible for the current culture of your church fellowship. All right, everybody with me on this? You, as the leader of your fellowship, are responsible for the current culture of your fellowship. Now, the good news is, if you don't like it, you can change it. So if the evangelistic temperature is not where you would like for it to be, you've got the great opportunity in your faith family to actually make a difference. But you have to own that. You've got to personally say, this is my responsibility as the leader to actually lean our church family to be more evangelistic. And then you've got to get, which is step 2, the massive clarity. And I'm going to give this to you. Rick, if you don't mind helping me out. And maybe I'll give you some as well, if you don't mind. You mind running some of those? This is going to be kind of an example. Let me keep going. All right, there we go. I'm going to give you a blank one here in a second, but I'm going to hand you this one filled out so you can kind of have an idea of what we're talking about here this afternoon. And then I'm actually going to have you at your tables have some conversation with the guys who were there. So this is a massive clarity exercise. What this does is it leads you through asking some very simple questions, but if you answer them and you actually put some time into it, you will have a strategic plan begun to push over the domino that you want to focus on. Now, again, what I told you is do not try to push all 7 dominoes over at once, but instead get very specific. What is the one domino that you want to push over? So if you can kind of see the top here, and again, this is an example, so you'll see the train of thought. But let's say somebody sat through the training just like you did, and they said, the one domino that I want to push over is praying for lost people by name. So the first thing that you want to do is ask this question: what are the 5, and I bought an eyeball real fast just so I can tell you this. Sometimes you're going to have more than 5 must-dos. Again, this is an example, right? But here's what I do encourage people. Don't have more than 12 must-dos. And I'll explain to you why, Lord, if I don't forget, Lord willing, in just a minute, all right? But what are the 5 must-dos in order to push over that domino? So you can kind of see my examples that I've jotted down here. One must-do. I want to research how others have done it in their church for ideas. Second must-do. I want to get key leaders to brainstorm how-to tools to make this practical. Okay, let me get your eyeballs one more time on this, right? As the leader, don't feel like you need to go into your office by yourself and come up with a plan.
That's right.
I encourage you to get lay leaders in the context of your church involved in the planning process. Here's the thing. Sometimes the best idea at your church doesn't come from you. Sometimes the best idea at your church comes from somebody who is sitting in the pew and may have never had an opportunity to say anything. So for us, what we always talked about as a staff is we want to create the environment so that the best idea rises to the surface. And that best idea, again, may not come from you, may not come from me. So that's why I kind of put in here, get key leaders to brainstorm. Number 3, must do, develop a 2-week series, training people on how to do this. And in my mind, I was thinking a 2-week sermon series. Number 4, share with other key leaders how we plan to roll this out to the church. Again, eyeball to eyeball real quick, let me explain this to you. When you get up in your church family and you really want to challenge them to do something that's new, that's creative, you're kind of casting a little vision, as soon as you're finished presenting that, what will happen in your church is the same thing that happens in all churches. The people hear it, and then the people will ask who they believe to be a leader in the church. Sometimes they're Sunday school leaders, sometimes a deacon, and they'll say, what is the pastor talking about? And if that leader looks at that person and says, I have no idea what he's talking about, then the vision's dead in the water. Right? So what you want to do is ask the question, who needs to know about this before I get up and start trumpeting this to the whole church? And I'll tell you how I learned that the hard way. Because I got up, when I first started pastoring, I was 23, so I got up, I had big vision, big plan, right? And I got up and I shared it with everybody else and fired up about it. And when I got finished with it, people started talking amongst themselves. And they were saying, what's the preacher talking about? And the leaders, lay leaders of the church, they were like, well, we don't know what he's talking about. It took me another 2 years just to turn that ship back around and get everybody on the same page. So you're asking the question, who needs to know before I actually talk about it? That's why I put that down there as an example. And then here's the 5th one, schedule times in worship to actually pray for lost people by name. Worst thing you can do as a leader is tell the church family what you're going to do and then not talk about it anymore. That's a terrible idea, right? I just actually consulted a guy this week, actually. He said he had cast the state of the church and where were they going over the next 2 years, and he did that like 6 weeks ago. I said, what have you said over the past 5 weeks about it? He said, nothing. I said, well, you got to start saying something, right? They've already forgotten it. Y'all do realize this, right? Your people in your church don't think about church typically till around Sunday. Are y'all with me? So they're not thinking about it all week long like you are. So you want to continue to make it very plain and say it over and over and often. Matter of fact, say it so much it makes you sick and you're embarrassed that you're saying it again. About the time you're embarrassed to say it again is about the time people are actually understanding and listening. Y'all with me? Somebody write that down. That was good. So here's another thing. This is a key question. List 3 to 5 things that you can't focus on right now. That is a massive question. It doesn't mean that you're not going to focus on them. It's just that you're not going to focus on them right now. For example, reworking the bylaws. How many would like to rework the bylaws at church, right? Yeah, so you think, and that may be something that needs to be done in the life of your church, but is that the most important thing to do right now? So for this example, I just said, I wouldn't focus on that right now. How about this one? Taking time to start a new outreach ministry. Now that sounds like something good though, doesn't it? Yeah, but I've got to learn, I've got to lead my church and pray for lost people by name. That's my priority. That's the domino. So although this is a good concept, I'm going to put that on hold for a moment so that I can focus on this one domino. And how about this one? Seeking to improve check-in process for preschoolers. Right, again, you know that there are some things that need to be done. Here's what I love to do when I walk through this. And I'll tell you guys, because I'm a nerd, right? I do this every single month. I have a sheet of paper that looks similar to this, but it sits on my desk. I know what my overall goals for the year are. I know what I need to do that month in order to accomplish those overall goals. And then I know what I need to do every single week in order to accomplish that goal for that month, which will help me accomplish the full goal for the year. Are you following? But this question is the one that's helped me the most. What can I not focus on right now? Sometimes you're writing some things down there, and there may be several, especially if you're new at a church. There's a lot of things you feel like you got to focus on. Some things you can delegate, like preschool check-in. If this was a legit exercise that I was doing, I would delegate that to somebody. I'd find somebody in the church and be like, hey, listen, this is how I delegate too, just so you guys, because this helps. Don't just ask somebody to do something, tell them why you want them to do it. So I would go and say, you know what I want to do? I've talked to Dave. Hey, you know what I want to do? I want to lead our church to pray for lost people by name. You down with that, aren't you? He's like, yes, yes. Well, there's one thing that has to be done that's kind of getting my attention. Man, you think you could help me with it? We need to create a preschool check-in deal. I would love to just let you run with that, make that happen so that I can focus on leading our church to pray for lost people by name. When I delegate task or whatever it is, or even authority in the context of the church, if that person understands why I'm giving it to them and how it's helping the overall church move forward, I've never had anybody say no. That's crazy, isn't it? I've had a lot of people say no when I say, we need volunteers for preschool. Yeah, ain't nobody volunteer for that, right? But if they can see how it's helping the overall mission, it just makes a huge difference. So that's just free information, all right? So you're jotting those things down. Now, as you go through this little deal, you use a category of 3, 6, or 12 months. How long do you believe it's going to take for you to push the domino over? So then you just rewrite statement number 1, finish the sentence. The one domino that I want to push over is praying for lost people by name. And let's just say I gave the date February 2020. So now looking back at your must-do list. Now follow this right here. You come back up here, your must-do list. Assign a month to each one of those must-dos. So you can see here, the research how others have done it in their church for ideas. If you look over in that little box, I got September 2019. Y'all see that, right? And then every single one, all I did was assign the very next month. Everybody's following this train, right? Super simple. Now, check this out. Drop back down to the bottom, and you complete this sentence. The first month, I must research how others have done it in their church for ideas. In order for me to accomplish this, I must, and then I just jotted down some things that I'd like to do to figure that out. I'm going to call 7 pastors, and I'm going to talk to them about what they're doing. I'm going to do a web search. Y'all have heard of the internet, right? Plenty of stuff you can find out there on the World Wide Web. So you find some good ideas. Here's another one. Collect top 5 ideas to share with key leaders. And then I put this one down. Contact Georgia Baptist Mission Board. I have to put that one down. Y'all with me on that? Because that's where I work. All right, so anyway, but you put them down. But then notice what I did for September. I put September week 1. September week 2. September week 3. September week 4. So check this out. This is really what you're doing. If you can imagine a large domino that says pray for lost people by name, your must-dos, your 5 must-dos, 6 must-dos, however you come up with, and I correlate them to months. That's why I say don't go over 12, because there's 12 months in a year. What you're doing with your must-dos, though, is you're creating these other dominoes. And then when you go down to the month itself, you're creating simple dominoes, smaller. But when you flick that one, I'm going to call 7 pastors. I can do that this week. So I can flick that one over. That's going to lead me to that next deal. I'm going to call it Georgia Baptist Mission Board. It's going to lead me to the next deal. I'm going to do a web search. It's going to lead me to the next deal. I'm going to talk with the key leaders about what I found out. And then I'm into the next month, which is October, and I just do the whole thing over again. I go back to get key leaders to brainstorm how-to ideas to make it practical. And then I break it down to 4 must-dos. I put it on the week, and I've got a strategic plan. Everybody following this? Now here's the crazy thing. When you walk through this, what you'll end up doing really is challenging yourself to take those concepts and put them into the life of your calendar. So check this out. I call this disciplined courage. Disciplined courage. By this, I simply mean that you are putting down, as I said here, call 7 pastors I want to talk to September week 1. I've got my Google Calendar in front of me now. I'm going to find in that first week of September a 90-minute window that I'm going to set an appointment for myself that's what I'm doing during that 90 minutes. And the reason I call it discipline is because your Google Calendar will not set the schedule for you. You've got to do it, right? So you have to do it. And the reason I say courage is because you've got to have the courage to not let anybody take advantage of that 90-minute window that you put down. That means nobody can bother you. So if you have a secretary, you want to tell your secretary, during this 90-minute window, unless somebody dies or my wife calls, don't mess with me. Everybody with me? That means when Bob, who comes to the church every single week and walks up in there and wants to see the pastor, if he shows up at that time, your secretary needs to be able to say, pastor's in an appointment right now. He can call you, though, whenever he's done. Y'all following this? You got That takes courage, does it not? Because most pastors are people pleasers. We hate to say no. And we feel like we've got to drop everything at any moment to do anything. That's why a lot of our churches don't go anywhere. Because we've got to be disciplined to say, this is the most important thing, I think, to lead our church to be evangelistic. I've got to get serious about it. I'm going to block it, and I'm going to be like a dog, protecting a bone when it comes to protecting that time. Everybody following it? Mm-hmm. And then I just said it like this. Time block your calendar to prioritize the most dues you've allocated. Protect that time. And then don't play dominoes alone. Now, why am I saying this? Because what I'm creating for you in the culture of just your relationships right here in this room is a brand new question you can ask pastors that you're buddies with after this. You let a week go by, you come up to those guys, maybe y'all want to meet every couple of weeks or whatever, or every month, and just say, how's your domino going? And then you're sharing. Y'all with me? Are y'all with me? Yes, sir. Come on now. Y'all help me out. Yes, sir. All right, here's what we're going to do now. I can't stand Patrick, man. Oh, you man. Thank you, brother. Now I'm going to hand you one out blank. That's it, everybody. Thanks, So what I'm going to do with this blank one, now that you've kind of seen an exercise of what it looks like, is I want you to get your pen. I want you to get your pen, and I want to walk you through this exercise. All right?
Take it and read it.
Hey, yeah, just scan it. You're paying for those. I get some more.
All right, everybody hang with us. Hang with us, because this is where it kind of rubber meets the road right here. Right? Y'all have one? All right.
Yeah.
I'll get you.
Rubber meets the road right here. So right now,
cooperative program dollars.
And let me get eyeballs, because I want to tell you this, because I don't want you to think that normally you can do this in 15 minutes, because that's not true. I'm only going to do, we're going to take about 15 minutes, but normally, if you want to really get strategic, you need to have a couple of hours that you can just sit alone and you can start walking through this and processing it in your own mind. And you're making notes. When I'm making notes, oftentimes I'll be jotting 1,000 things down. And then I prioritize out of those 1,000 things. So this isn't, although we're going to go real fast through it, it's going to take you longer to do it if you're going to do it for real. Y'all with me on this? But I just like to practice, so let's do that. First thing, let's say you just heard all 7 dominoes, you've written every one of them down. Let's say you have to fill this out, and you go ahead and fill it out. The one domino that I want to push over is, go ahead and jot down an answer right there. Jot down an answer, because you're going to share it with your table in just a minute. Give you 30 more seconds. Pause there. So now I want you to share it with the guys around the table. Just tell them real quick. Don't explain everything. Just say, here's the domino that I put down. Go ahead and do that.
Personal evangelism.
I said the Sunday morning experience. Act like they knew you were coming.
I put prayer for what I do to get people.
Yeah, prayer. Definitely prayer.
We pray for people by name. I mean, we have a board. We love that. The best part is where they get to go.
All right, give it 2 minutes. Make sure everybody's sharing at your table. 2 minutes.
Marks through their name. But it's a heart beside it when you're saved. It's pretty awesome. We make them teach them about
What'd y'all put?
personal evangelism.
What'd you put? Prayer.
We need to pray. I just met you.
Yeah, that's right.
Did y'all put
Act like they knew you were coming.
All right. Now come back to me. come back to me eyeballs to eyeball for a moment. All right, so the next question we're going to ask is what are the 5 must-dos? And remember, I didn't say this a minute ago, but a must-do is not a to-do. A must-do means if I don't do this thing, this ain't happening. So it has a little more priority than just a to-do list, right? But what you're going to do is you're going to jot down. I'm going to give you about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes to jot down as many must-dos as possible. Then you're going to share those with your group. Check this out, though. Don't try to sound smart, all right? Don't get insecure on me and feel like you're not going to give a good answer to your group. They don't care. They're not going to remember when they leave anyway, right? So just write down some things, but here's what you have to keep in mind. You've got to be specific, and it has to be an action-oriented statement. So, for example, if you did put down pray for lost people by name, one of the must-dos can't be we need to pray for lost people by name, right? Or we need to pray for our whole community. Right? That's very generic. So get as specific and action-oriented as you possibly can. All right. So jot down a few, and then I'll tell you when to share. Go. David went to the restroom because he couldn't come up with any answers. So I used to do that in high school. I remember those days. All right, you may not have all 5 of them jotted down. But take some time now and just share with your group the must-do statements that you have. And here's what I want you to do with your group. If you're listening to the must-do statement that's being read, listen for whether or not it is specific and action-oriented. If it's not, help them recraft that statement so that it is specific and action-oriented. Does that make sense? All right, go.
Go ahead.
I put, first we need to get our lead ministers to brainstorm together. We got to get them one mind, one accord on it. Then I put, we need to identify the community culture. Where are the people?
Yeah.
Where are we going to reach them?
Yeah.
Then we're going to train on leaving our personal bubble.
Yeah.
That's kind of, almost everybody's got a safety bubble. And then schedule training on a simple gospel and then implement it.
I just put create a mindset for like knowing guests are coming, and then train the people that are working, develop a process where they can, you know, a process they're going to go through to greet the people and help them get to where they need to go.
So I kind of run it off this. I've been processing doing like a not a David's tent, but something similar, or a prayer room kind of deal. Trying to help facilitate one of those. So this morning, noon, and night prayer deal across the city. So just research how others have done it. My first one, brainstorm with key prayer leaders on the who, like the how-tos, and also the who's, like who are the people, who leads worship, who are your intercessors, and then the third step is develop a schedule with some practical do's and don'ts and some training, like how do you do it across the board denomination. initially, how often we're going to be able to do it, is there any training we need to do for people doing it, and then my fourth point will be contact and gather these intercessors and prayer worship leaders to just process details and talk about time slots. And then the fifth one would be develop and implement the schedule and with location.
It's good. Yeah, this is a good process to use for about anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to have this in the dock.
Yeah.
Where you can.
Yeah, that's why I need a bunch of copies.
That's what I'm making right now.
Basically, it's what we do, but in our head.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't spotlight.
Yeah, even construction.
Especially since you about the three things you want to focus on.
Find myself when I'm 1 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and feel.
Oh, you too. Yeah.
Good grief, man, I gotta go to sleep.
Yeah.
Then I was here's the problem. I said, God, I've never seen
He talked about coming home, how to do what the 6 things you can focus on the next 6 weeks. And the second time he did that, he tied it to his calendar. He talked about tying it to his calendar. To get those things, cut the light on it. That time management.
You out? Hey, make sure you flush it.
Where were you at Concord? Northeast. Where's Northeast? What city?
It's right above Gainesville.
Claremont.
Oh,
Claremont is the city.
I know what I'm saying.
Little bitty.
Super tight. The population actually declined while we were there. So it went from 600 to 525. 525, yeah. But it was a very, this kind of a regional church.
Yeah.
So, and then when we started doing sites, we were picking places where we were having people come in and kind of start them in those locations. All right, guys. All right. Come back to me. Come back to me. All right, let me get your eyeballs real fast, and let me just ask you by nodding your head, yes or no, is this remotely helpful? Yes. Hugely beneficial, right? So, and I'll tell you, I'm going to give you the next question, but I want to tell you kind of what got me leaning in this particular direction as we started working with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board was going through those 5 whys. Why are churches not evangelistic? Because pastors aren't. Why are pastors not? And then when I got down to this idea that a lot of them, and I know it's not you guys, but all the other pastors in Georgia, were just not very good at managing their own time. So this is really a backdoor time management concept. See you, boss. Hey, thanks for coming, bro.
Yes, sir.
All right. Hey, we'll get you an Atlanta hat next time you're here, okay? God bless you.
That needs to be fun with.
Them Dallas. That's pretty good. But when I was in college, I was a college pastor, and my pastor at that time basically said, Levi, I'm going to send you on this Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing called Franklin Covey Training. Y'all ever heard of this before? And I said, now what is this? He was like, well, it's basically time management training. And I remember literally after he told me that and I walked out, I rolled my eyes and said, what in the world do I need that for? That was the best thing that has ever helped me in the context of practical ministry. Just time management, just a massive thing. All right, so y'all still with me? Yeah. All right, we're coming back. I only want you to write down one thing you can't focus on right now. So go ahead, write that down, share it with your group. I'll give you 3 minutes. Go.
Don't focus on the things you can't focus on.
Keep focused on the women's ministry.
Who said this? Yeah, Kyle said he had to leave. He said the one thing he can't focus on is this training right now. God bless you, man. You're always a good encouragement. I love you, brother. All right, y'all go ahead and share that one thing with your group.
But finances, but the calendar, man, our calendar is like the most wicked thing we own. Everybody's fighting over the calendar.
So how do you do that? How do you plan your calendar? at church.
If it doesn't, basically what he says, if it doesn't reach our vision, it's not on the calendar. It's a live choice. If we have to decide between a birthday party or
So what are they fighting over?
just time, sanctuary time, or not sanctuary time, but fellowship
All right, let me
time.
tell you what we've done and to stop all that.
All right. So bring it back to me.
I'll tell you.
Bring it back to me, and then
It helped us.
I'm gonna close
That stuff.
I'm gonna close it down. All right. So this is it. Eyeballs real fast. Once you go through this, you understand the next step. The next step is to identify how long do you think it's going to take. Now, sometimes you may be able to write a domino down, and you may say, I think it's only going to take me 3 months to do it. Well, make it 3 months then. But sometimes you're going to have such a large domino that it may take you 12 months to do it. There may be 12 must-do statements, big chunks that you've got to do in order to push that domino over. But then you just get real strategic with it. You just walk it out. And I encourage you, you can develop this however you want to, but you put this on your desk so that you see it every single day. And this is key. You pray specifically about whatever domino you're trying to push over and ask the Lord to help you with it. Y'all with me on that? You do realize the Lord wants to help you, right? So he didn't call you to ministry so you could do it by yourself. He said, no, I'm calling you and I'm going to empower you to do it, right? So he's going to help you. So you pray about that, you focus on that. It makes a massive, massive difference. And here's also what I'm going to share with you. This is outside the vein of evangelism. This little exercise can be done with any team in your church. So if you have a deacon ministry group getting together, you can ask the question, as deacons, what's the one domino we want to push over this year? That creates a great conversation. You may have Vacation Bible School in the summertime, and you may say, what's the one domino we want to push over for Vacation Bible School this year? And then you identify what that domino is, then you just go straight through it. What are the 5 or 6 things we must do in order to accomplish it? What can we not do this year in order to focus on that? And then you just start breaking it down all the way to your months and then your days, or your weeks rather. Everybody following that train? It really is simple. And here's what I will tell you too. Most of your, and this may be more me than you, but a lot of the leaders in the context of your church, they work in some sort of secular business on a regular basis. And you know what they're doing on a regular basis? They're having conversations like this. So as a leader in the context of your church, you lead well when you learn how to talk their language. So when you sit down and you begin to talk strategy, and you begin to walk them through this process, that guy who is an engineer at Koyo, that's somebody I'm thinking of, in Dahlonega, he immediately knows what I'm talking about. And then he comes alongside and actually shares with me another process to help enhance even something like this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's just huge. Leading a church, please hear this, please hear this. Leading a church is a whole lot more than just preaching on Sunday morning. Yep. A whole lot more. Now, I will tell you, I didn't know that. Here's what I grew up hearing. I grew up hearing phenomenal preachers who would make this statement. You preacher boys, this is how they'd say it, if you will fill the pulpit, God will fill the pews. That sounded like an awesome statement. So I would get up and start preaching, and guess what I realized about the pews? They weren't full. So then I started asking the question, does that mean I'm not filling the pulpit? Y'all see what just happened there? And the reality is, you could be preaching phenomenal sermons, but pastors are called to feed, so keep preaching great sermons. But they're also called to lead. And leadership typically happens outside of the pulpit, not just in the pulpit. That means you got to start spending some time with some guys in your church, some ladies, and helping them see where you're going. And this just gives you a format in which you can talk to them and everybody's on the same page. Does that make sense? So my goal at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board is to help every church in Georgia increase their level of evangelism fervor. That's our goal, right? We've got 6 guys on our team who are consultants. Rick Bisadecki is your guy. He knows this process. If you ever need help, and this is not me trying to be sweet because I work at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board now. But if you ever need help, I seriously want you guys to take advantage of us. I want you to call us because we want to help you. That's what we live for that. That's what we desire to do. And I'll also tell you that there are guys now at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board who are not just focused on evangelism. They're focused on discipleship. They're focused on missions. They're focused on next generation, which is kind of like college students all the way down to babies in the crib. So you've got all of these resources at your disposal. Take advantage of them. We just finished, because I had put it together, basically a health diagnostic tool for a church to take. And what I'm doing with that health diagnostic tool is that a pastor or a leader at your church can go through and answer the questions, and it throws out for you what's the most important thing you need to be focused on right now as a church. So it may throw out evangelism is the most important thing. And then we'll just lead people through this little process right here. It may throw out discipleship, but you would also just could walk through this simple process. Does that make sense to you? Super easy, man. Again, we're here to help any way we can, so please, please, please take advantage of us. And I will tell you, I didn't tell you this earlier. I've got 3 minutes. I'm going to tell it to you like this. The reason that my heart is bent toward evangelism is when I was 5 years old, I had an older brother whose name was Lance. He was 7 years old. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So my parents began to take Lance everywhere they possibly could to try to get him help, and nobody could help him, so he ended up dying. So I'm 5 years old. My best bud, my older brother, is dead. So and I've got kids now, so I can't imagine what it was like. But my parents tell me I would come into the living room and say, "Where's Lance?" after he had died, and they would try to explain to me that he was in heaven. And my mom told me, I don't remember this, but she tells me that I asked her that question, and she said, "He's in heaven now." And I was like, "Where's heaven?" And she said, "Well, it's above the clouds." That was her way of explaining to a 5-year-old. She said, "I immediately ran into his bedroom, got his hat, and ran out to the front yard and started throwing it up in the air, trying to get it to him because he had forgotten it." But what happened through the death of my brother was that I came at a very early age to realize that life is short, people die, and they go somewhere. So from that day forward, I started asking after every person died, where did they go, heaven or hell? Because there's only 2 options, heaven or hell. And then I also, by God's grace, had someone share with me the gospel when I was a young kid, 7 years old. And because of all that had gone on in my life, and I came to realize that there's one God who sent Jesus Christ, his son, to die on the cross for my sin, be buried and resurrected, and that I need to turn from my sin and trust in Jesus alone for salvation. I heard that message and immediately said, that's what I want to do. I definitely want to give my heart to Christ, and gave my heart to the Lord. And literally from that day forward, that was 7 years old, till now, the Lord's just birthed this desire to see people come to know Jesus. And I will tell you, one of the things that saddens my heart the most is that you can go in a lot of churches today and not hear how to come to faith in Jesus. You couldn't get saved in some churches if you wanted to. That's a scary reality, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So we've got to remember, there is a heaven, there is a hell, and everybody's going one of 2 places. And God, by his grace, has given you the gospel, the true gospel, and now you have an opportunity to go and share that with others so that they can come to faith in Christ. What a privilege, man. An ambassador for the sake of the kingdom. Every day you throw your legs out of the bed, another day to speak on behalf of heaven to those who are on the earth. So don't waste your life. Get after lost people. Amen on that? Yeah. Let me pray for you. Father, thank you so much for each one of these guys. Just the opportunity really to share a little bit of my heart, a little bit of strategy. And God, I do know, bottom line is, we can talk strategy all day long, but if we don't execute with discipline these simple objectives on a weekly basis, then we don't see progress. So Lord, for whatever these guys have written down so far, may it just be something to spark further thought, further prayer, further planning, so that they can lead their church families to reach people with the gospel. And we do pray for Bartow County, this association, and we just ask that you would raise up pastors and leaders in the context of churches who will take the true gospel of Jesus to those who are far from you. And Lord, I pray for fruit from the harvest. that every single church can celebrate in. So when somebody gives their heart First Baptist, somebody gives their heart Rolling Hills, that everybody's fired up about that. There's no competition.
Yeah.
We're on the same team. We're just trying to lead people to come to know you because you are worthy. And that's in the name of Jesus that we pray, and everybody said, Amen. All right.